Hey, sorry, real busy morning, so I'm here now.
Nice to see you, Keith. Thank you for doing this today. It's wonderful of you to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations on finishing your degree too. That's wonderful to have you in the profession.
Thank you.
Nice uniform, Keith. Officer Keith. Sorry.
Yeah, we did a search warrant this morning, so I'm not shirt and tie today.
That's okay. This is great to see your multiple identities, your multiple professions. I think that's fantastic. We're so happy you're in the social work field and also law enforcement. Great.
Thank you.
Really good.
Hi, everyone. We're getting some attendees in. We have about 28. We're going to give people just a couple more seconds to get in. Thank you all for being here, and we'll just get started in a moment. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session this morning, Social Work Practice in the Midst of COVID-19 and Implications for Social Work Practice and Future Directions. We're focusing on self-care today. We're focusing on what it means to practice self-care in the midst of all the great work that we're doing. Thank you all for being here. I am Marian Dixis, a faculty member here at the School of Social Work and Director of Student Affairs. And today we have with us some distinguished faculty from the Office of Field Education and a recent graduate of our undergraduate social work program. So thank you, Mark Lamar, for being with us here today. Bernardo Hiraldo, who's also in Field Education, Associate Director of Field on the Camden campus. And we also have Keith Knaus with us, who is a recent grad of our BASW program, to speak with us this morning. So thank you all, and I'm going to hand this over to Mark to get us started. And before we do that, just a quick announcement. We are recording this session, and it will be available to view later. There will be an opportunity to ask questions that you have. Feel free to use the chat to engage with each other, and also type in any questions you have there as well. So thank you all, and Mark, I'm passing it off to you.
Thank you, Marian, very much. I'm Mark Lamar, Executive Director of Field, and also I teach at the school. And what a pleasure it is to be with everybody today. I'm just going to make a couple of introductory remarks, and I'll participate in the conversation too, but mostly want to be working directly with Professor Hiraldo and with recent graduate Keith Knaus, who we're very pleased to have with us today. We were thinking about what would be an important message to get out on a summer day to new students and to perhaps continuing students. And we were really picturing ourselves looking at our social work practice in the midst of COVID-19 implications for field and future practice. How should we be behaving now and be thinking about behavior going forward as social workers? And we really were looking at the impact of COVID-19 and other social problems this year on individuals, families, and communities. And we were really drawn to the idea, most particularly because this was a very successful year for us finally realizing a project that had been on our minds and in some of our efforts for the last few years, that is self-care. And we've got two critical players in that conversation today who will speak to us about it. Looking at what self-care is, why it's important to us, why it's an essential piece of who we are, not just a one-timer or an occasional thing, but why it needs to be baked into who we are and part of our lives as we serve other people. We really have an ethical obligation to adopt self-care as a part of our skill set. It is a skill. It is really something that we need to refine and be good at and understand in terms of how it informs our work with clients. So we were grateful this year, and I'll let Bernardo, Professor Hiraldo, tell the story more in detail, but we were fortunate to have the opportunity, even amidst these problem times of COVID and field placements having to be a little less than traditional, we were able to develop a faculty field placement with Professor Hiraldo and several of his students. And I'm going to turn it over to him and to Keith Knaus to talk about just exactly what they spent an awful lot of time doing this year and what happened because they got together and had this opportunity. So let me pass it to Professor Hiraldo.
Thank you, Mark Lamar. I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this event, and thank you for your invitation. I wanted to speak to the big topic of self-care as we're moving forward and all the challenges that we experienced this year. Keith Knaus, Ruben Wilmer, and Courtney Sherwin was able to participate in this event, this work with me in terms of self-care. And the importance, the reason or the rationale behind this work is that we know for a long time how important it is that us being in the field and being in the forefront of working with individual families, communities, how this could be challenging for us, right? We're agents of change. We want to be out there and we want to support our communities and the people that we serve. But at the same time, recognizing how challenging it could be for us sometimes to be able to help others, but also be able to take care of ourselves as we are listening to, as part of our work, we are listening to other people's stories and the things that are impacting them, and sometimes how this could have an effect on us, over a period of time. So just really recognizing how important it is for us to be self-aware of how these things can impact us, and being able to use this information to make us more effective, to be able to sustain us, to be able to move forward in our career in the social work field. So part of this, myself, I was able to work with Courtney, Ruben, and Keith on this project, and really putting it from perspective that we want to help you guys be the best social workers that you can be. And where to best learn this is as you're going into field practice, how are you going to be able to incorporate this? How are you guys going to be more intentional about taking care of yourselves, and to be, having this discussion more openly, less stigma around what it is to mean to ask for help, what it means to for us to be able to see it within ourselves without seeing us being less effective as a social worker. These are the things that we wanted to make you guys more aware of as you're moving into your field practice. This year in particular has been a challenge because of COVID-19. Not only have we experienced it personally in our lives, but we're working with individuals who also have experienced this themselves. And how do we be able to negotiate all of this? So we want to have this discussion with you today of what that might look like and how you guys can think about how you're going to be able to incorporate this. Keith is one of those students that really helped participate in all of this. And I want him to really speak to his experiences related to how he's been able to manage, he's a officer, police officer. He was working full-time. He was doing his field internship with me, and he had other responsibilities in his life that he had to negotiate. So having that, having him speak to his personal experiences and how he was able to manage this and his thoughts related to this will be key and helpful to help us guide us in this discussion. So Keith, if you can just say a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then speaking to the experience of going through the self-care project with me and how that, was a benefit to you and how that maybe guided your, help you think about your future practice would be helpful to us. So.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is, like they mentioned, my name is Keith Knaus. I am a detective sergeant here in the Cumberland County Prosecutor's Office. I run the Special Victims Unit, which encompasses crimes against children, physical and sexual abuse, We run the Megansall unit for our county residents. We keep track of our residents who are supposed to register under the guidelines. We also run the the Internet Crimes Against Children, which is our child pornography investigators. So, as a matter of fact, I was just telling Professor Hiraldo yesterday, I had a ICAC search warrant this morning. That's why I was running a few minutes late. So the day-to-day operation that we do in our unit is very stressful. We almost act like social workers in our profession, because what we do is we interview children that are victims of crime. So we take on a lot of the stuff that we talk about in social work, where vicarious trauma, secondary traumas become an issue, where you run into burnout and other such things. Compound that with the social work practice, field work, and your day-to-day just curriculum, it tends to be a little bit stressful. I would say last semester, actually my first year coming into the social work practice, which was 2009, or social work curriculum was in 2019. We started in September. 2 weeks into the semester, we had a missing 5-year-old that I spent weeks that I missed class and was trying to catch up. It became very stressful. This self-care research that we did was probably a blessing in disguise for me, because since then I've eaten better. I've learned to work out my stress and become a better person. And I feel like I preach to everybody here at work about self-care and what they should be doing, because much like social work, the unit that I work in is very much you're helping other people all the time, and you tend to forget about helping yourself. And the most important thing is, again, the helpers always tend to forget how to help themselves, and also tend to be less vulnerable than other people because they try to be stronger than everybody else. And one thing that I can preach to anybody who wants to hear or look through the research is you have to learn to take time. You have to learn to know where your points are before you start to break or burn out. And I think the self-care, the research that the team did was amazing. We have a lot of self-care steps. And again, the indicators for you to look at. I think I may have talked too much, so I'm going to turn it back over to Professor Hiraldo.
Thank you, Keith. So Keith, part of your experience, what did you think, if you can maybe highlight some of the key things that you really took away from your self-care? Like what do you think where you were before and how you are now, and what helped you to move forward in terms of implementing the self-care? Because we know that sometimes we say, you know what, I don't have time. People, in the classes, students say, Professor Hiraldo, I barely have time to just get enough sleep to get my paper going, right? And try to complete the hours and take care of everything else. So what can you say a little bit more about that, in terms of what small steps did you take to sort of try to implement that? Because nothing's really changed. Same thing, your schedule was there, but you made some sort of conscious effort to make some changes.
Yeah, exactly. When people think of self-care before they get into learning about self-care, they think it's a spa day. They think it's, all right, let me take a day and go to the beach. Let's do this, let's do that. Whereas now you think to yourself, okay, well, wow, I've been sitting at my computer terminal for 20 minutes. I need to take a break. Stand up, stretch, focus at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds, just to get your eyes to readjust, so you're not staring at something all day. Getting up and stretching is very key too. I mean, I love to say that this watch has done a lot for me, because every hour it tells me I need to stand, and you stand up for a whole minute, and then you think, all right, well, I'm better recharged, and you go from there. But again, it was little things that when I first started, the 20 rule, or just maybe closing my eyes and taking 60 seconds out of my day to calm my breathing. I became a much calmer person in general. I don't usually yell a lot, but my inside wasn't yelling, like my mind wasn't yelling anymore. I became much more controlled. And the more I became, this is so much better for me, I was like, okay, well, now I need to go for a walk. If I go for a half-hour walk at lunch, or at the end of the day. So if you get an hour for lunch, it takes you 10, 15 minutes to eat. You take another half hour and you just go walk through nature, and just be able to appreciate the stuff that's around you, as opposed to always just having that your mind running in 10 different directions. And I think after that happened, I realized I need to carve more time out of my day, maybe go to the gym, or, go play a sport with my friends, or just get out and do something. And it wasn't all, and it definitely wasn't more the maladaptive things, such as like going out for a bunch of drinks with friends, or, well, I'm not a smoker or do anything else, but that would kind of be like, oh, we had a bad day, let's go get some beers. And then that would be, oh, okay, well, now the next day I wake up and go, wow, that was a waste of money or whatever. But I realize now the more I work out, or the more I concentrate on myself, the better I feel, like at the end of the day or the start of the new day.
And so it sounds like, part of the discussion that we were having as a group related to this was this idea of how people first can learn how to be able to recognize their own stress levels and be in touch with that, right? And how it could potentially develop into something maladaptive, or it hasn't developed into something maladaptive, right? And being able to recognize that. And if getting into that point, what do people do about it, right? But really first is working in this area where we want students going into this field to start really checking in with themselves about how they're feeling, how they're negotiating their stress, and what they can do to take some steps to alleviate some of that pressure, right?
Correct.
And in terms of in terms of your own experiences related to thinking about this in your coursework, what do you think? Because I know you and I, you've been in my class. We talked about self-care from maybe 2 years ago when you were a junior, right? Mm-hmm. And now you're going into, you're working on this with me. What do you think about this idea of incorporating this and having these discussions, not only in the class, but also in field with your field instructor?
I think it's definitely important to have the field instructors know about self-care practice, or knowing that what's best to benefit. I mean, I know as field supervisors, you might be able to recognize burnout, but if you're in your day-to-day work and work environment, sometimes you're not going to pick up on the signs fast enough. So I think it's important for the field supervisors to know, hey, look, hey, Keith, if you start to feel this way, let me know. If you start to feel this way, let me know. So it's not so much the outward points that they're going to see, as much as more it might be inward, so they can kind of get a jump on something before it becomes something worse. I think it would be a great idea for field. I also think that I was talking to you about this the other day. I wrote a paper on making a course out of self-care, and not just for social workers, but just in the just for a humanities course, or maybe just part of the even part of it, the beginning of the school year, just so everybody knows, hey, look, you're going to feel burnout. This is a new experience for you. And then you could reiterate it when they get back into social work, because it's a very challenging field.
Thank you, Keith. I think it's important to be able to incorporate this at many different levels, right? And mm-hmm. for field instructors and faculty members to be able to create an environment where people feel comfortable talking about some of those pressures, some of that stress, right? And helping them be able to speak to it, so that they can take some steps to be able to address it. And I think as we're moving forward, really encouraging not only, I think being a Rutgers community and being part of the social work program, we really want to emphasize how important it is, how we all can work together to be the best that we can be, right? From faculty mm-hmm. members to students to field instructors who, and many host agencies that work with Rutgers University, how we can really create this environment that will really promote a well-being with all of us, right? Because I think that if we can do that, then we're going to be the best selves that we can be, that we're going to be more productive, that we're going to be more engaging, and we're going to be having, I believe, a greater impact on our mission, because we've taken the time to really, to take care of ourselves, and cultivated that. And I think it's a culture, and I think it's really something that really needs to continue to be built up, so that whenever anyone who's joining in this field is not going to be feeling like they want to get out 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now, that this is something that could be sustainable, for many years to come, as long as they want it and they feel it's not because they feel like it's too much for them. Right.
Yeah, and 100% true. I mean, but for that to happen, it would also have to be a continuing practice outside of where any new supervisors who get hired, not just in field, but supervisors out in the field,
right,
realize that when I became a supervisor, I had to go to a school recognizing burnout and stuff like that. But, you want to go have everybody realize that, hey, look, this is key moments for you as a supervisor. You need to realize when the workload's too much or too little. I mean, where it also falls in, like, even in the school where, hey, look, it looks like this is a lot for you. Let's kind of spread it out a little bit. And you try to work with people as best you can. And, much like my present career and, my future career, it's all basically the same. Within 3 to 5 years, a lot of people leave the field because it seems to be stressful. So the self-care is going to be, realizing the indicators and the self-care and knowing what's best for you. And that's the other thing is, you got to know what works best for you. There's no cookie cutter plan for self-care. Like, you need to say, okay, well, like for me, a half-hour walk in nature is great, but for somebody else, it might not be. So they might like to put their headphones in and listen to some music that calms them. But, as long as you're carving that part of your day out, and, supervisors in the field as well as in field work have to realize that there's some point that somebody may need a break.
Thank you, Keith. So maybe based on this discussion, Keith, maybe we could take a couple of questions related to some of the things that we have here. Sometimes thinking about what, as students are moving into field, what are some of the concerns, questions that they may have related to that?
Okay.
I'd like to read the question, if that would help, Bernardo. We have a good question. Is that all right?
Sure.
And from one of the students, burnout is something I'm worried about in this field. A course in self-care is something I would be very interested in. And Keith, I'll just put my 2 cents in. I read a terrific paper as a project proposal that Keith had written. Professor Hiraldo shared it. A wonderful paper. And the idea was that this would really be a whole focus area for a semester. So the question is this, from the student: do you have any suggestions for how to create boundaries between ourselves and clients so that we can maintain a healthy dynamic? Does Rutgers actively teach methods in doing so? This way we can support ourselves and in turn most effectively support our clients.
So it's a good question in terms of, because boundaries is a key issue here, right? And when we're engaging individuals is, we're trying to, part of boundaries is recognizing what's, what are your things? What is your stuff? And recognizing what's the clients, what they're bringing into the table, and being able to be able to identify that. And I think the self-awareness piece is going to be crucial in being able to identify that when you're working with a client, and be able to recognize that for yourself. I think part of this work is that, you have to, sometimes we go into this profession feeling really passionate about wanting to contribute and help others. But at the same time, we have to do some work within ourselves. And I think that's going to be part of the journey that many of you are going to take in terms of being able to recognize that. But being able to see that for yourself, what's coming up for you, being able to utilize the supervision to be able to address these things so that you can process that better and help your self-awareness related to that. It's going to be something that's going to be critical in terms of being able to know, where the line is when you're, trying to assess and work with the individual and apply your interventions. So.
And the other thing that I was thinking of is taking a self-assessment before you figure out what field you want to be in, because it's easier, if you're not used to a certain field and you won't know what kind of boundaries that you can put up, or if you're in a field that you're not comfortable with, you might be a little more open to the trauma or to the burnout, because you're taking on a lot of extra secondary traumas because you're not used to, or you're not accustomed to hearing what other people are going through. So that's also, you would want to think about what field you want to get into before you just jump in with both feet and then realize it's the wrong one.
I have another comment or a question from a student, and Marion, Professor Dixie's nicely included a reference. This year we did add a 5-week module on self-care that was an elective, and it also included COVID and use of technology. So it was one of our creative responses last fall. But what concerns me about, nothing was wrong with any of that effort. It was all a response to this. But I think what we're talking about here is a required or a very mainstream effort to get this subject matter and skill development in front of all students. In other words, if we leave things in an elective condition, it really will only reach the people who choose to take it. And having some required emphasis, understanding, we don't really leave skill development in interviewing as an elective. We don't leave policy understanding as an elective. Those are all things people need to develop when they come here and go to schools of social work. Likewise, having self-care be a required area of focus, an area of emphasis. So a student says, what might be the best platform for introducing students to the variety of self-care methods? And I think I'm thinking about two things. One is the required aspect of examining and really understanding and embracing and onboarding self-care as a skill set. And the other is, this is something that, you might take it as a course, but as Keith is pointing out, and Professor Hiraldo, this is a lifelong, you don't get the hang of it and then always know you're not done. It's something you continue to work at. I just wondered if you care to comment about that, the developmental aspect of this skill.
To me, it's a work in progress. You're never going to, when it comes to self-care, you're going to find different ways. You're going to find better ways to help yourself. I mean, and that's what it's all about. It's not a narcissistic trait. It's something where you have to take time for yourself, especially in these fields. I know I'm seeing here, it says the best platform. There's so many self-care methods out there. You have to find which one works best for you. We have the new website or the new web page through Rutgers that kind of gives you a brief overview, and there's a bunch of other selections that you can make on the website to look at self-care methods. I looked at a whole year's worth of self-care methods and procedures, and maybe I'm at an advantage for it. But like I said, even when I'm here at work, I tell them, hey, look, if you need to go talk to somebody, let's go talk to somebody. If you need to talk to somebody, come talk to me. We'll do something, but don't hold it inside. There's, again, I'm probably a little different than most supervisors, but I want my people to be not so much forthcoming, but more at ease, knowing that I'm there for them whenever they need me. But again, we have we also had the self-care during COVID PowerPoint presentation that we did back in the fall, which also brings up some self-care methods. So like I said, there's ample choices out there I was going to say plethora, but I'll go with ample. There's an ample amount of choices out there that you can look at and find which one works best for you. And it might not be the first one. It might be the 15th one, but it's going to be something. There's something out there for everybody.
Thank you, Keith. So let me show you guys, let me do one thing. In terms of considering, because when we're talking about, self-care, Mark is bringing up a good point in terms of this is something that, it's part of our NASW Code of Ethics. And now we have an amendment and 2 amendments, and one of them is self-care. And they're really speaking to this idea that, it's not only our personal responsibility to take care of ourselves, it's our professional responsibility. And they're really speaking to this in the Code of Ethics. And so it's something that, we don't want to put to the back burner. We don't want to say, I don't really have time to, take a little walk or, or try to take care of myself. Is really, as part of the social work community, we want to make sure that we're really engaging in this effort that we're taking care of ourselves. And so this is now codified even more and as part of the code of ethics. So I wanted to, just speak to that and show you guys that information. And then I wanted to walk you through the self-care website so you guys could be able to see what's been developed. And hopefully this is a resource guide for each and every one of you to be able to go back to. Now, the self-care website was not only developed for our students, but also for anybody who's really curious about this topic. And I'm hoping that many people are, especially after all the stress and pressures that everybody have gone through, that this could be one area that they could take a look at, information that would be very, very helpful to them. So let me, I'm going to pull up the website, and if you guys don't mind, I will share my screen.
And while Bernardo's doing that, we have another question. We'll get to it in a few minutes. Let's have Professor Hiraldo pull up the screen first, though, and thank you for questions. We'll get to them in the queue.
So this recently came out in terms of myself and my team, Ruben, Keith, and Courtney, working this together. But I think we're all on the same page of what it means to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And the NASW Code of Ethics just recently came out and just really highlighting the importance of this. And they really have indicated this as something that's really crucial. So here, I'm going to make this a little bigger, but we can see that how this is being incorporated here. And so in this highlighted paragraph here, we see that professional self-care is paramount for competent and ethical social work practice. Professional demands, challenging workplace climates, exposure to trauma warrant that social workers maintain personal and professional health, safety, and integrity. Social work organizations, agencies, and educational institutions are encouraged to promote organizational policies, practices, and materials to support social worker self-care. So here we really want to speak to this idea that as a school, as a university, we really take this as a priority and really important that we want to make sure that you guys are prepared as much as possible to go into the field, to be able to manage the responsibilities that you guys are going to have when you're working with the individual, family, and the community. And really want to encourage, and we're trying to cultivate the environment within our university to make sure that you guys are able to speak to this in your coursework, that you're able to speak to this in your to your field instructor, that you guys are implementing strategies to be able to, in the event that you're feeling burned out or you feel like you've been exposed to something in a session, that you're able to feel that have the safety to feel that you can speak to someone or reach out to somebody to be able to speak to this. Sometimes we know that that's not easy. Sometimes we need to feel like, I don't want to make myself vulnerable in that way. But I think that if we can take some small steps, it doesn't have to be, big ones, but if you can think about how in moments where you feel like you need to be able to reach out to somebody, who can you do that with? Who can you do that? And we're hoping that in the moments where you're going through your academic, experience here, that you take the opportunity to reach out to members within our program to be able to express some of the challenges, frustrations that you may experience while working in the field, and taking some really, putting some real plans in place to be able to manage this. So this is part of the amendments here, and this is something that we really want to make sure that you guys are aware of, and really want to encourage you guys to be able to practice it.
We were happy to see these formalized, and I'll just bridge this while Professor Hiraldo is getting us into this phenomenal website. Having the NASW stand up and add these as amendments this normalized this now. This brought it forward, brought it out of the shadows. And I've heard 3 references today to a concern about self-consciousness, narcissism, or stigmatization, fears of all of those things. If we ask for self-care, if we engage in it, and if we raise it. So this, by normalizing this and making it very public expectationally as professionals, I think this is a very good step.
Thank you, Mark. So this is the website that was developed with Keith, Ruben, and Courtney, and a great IT team that really put this information together that makes it really look great here. But the idea is that each of you can have access to this. It's here. You would go to the Office of Field Education website here, and you will see all sorts of information. But over here, you will see the self-care toolkit, and in it has various information here, really to educate anyone who's coming into this website about the various issues related to self-care. So in here you have this is one of the self-care newsletters that was developed by Keith and the students working on this, but really just speaking to this idea that we really want this to send this out to you guys to remind you that to take care of yourselves, and giving you some points, some tips in terms of how to be able to take care of yourselves. Here in the individual exercises, I want to, if you guys would take a look at this at some point. But here I wanted to just highlight this self-care questionnaire, and it might be a good starting point for each and every one of you to take a look at, where you are in these different areas. So when you talk about physical, psychological, and emotional self-care, what do you see yourself? It speaks to the idea of academic self-care, what that involves. Many of you, sometimes you have questions, you have concerns, you don't know, you feel stuck. I'm not sure if I can handle it, I don't know what to do. And really what I would encourage you to do is, if you're really struggling with putting with a paper, is reaching out to your feelings to your professor and being able to have that conversation with them. We're hoping that they can, many of us who are doing this really want to support our students through this process. For me, if a student came to me, Professor, I'm really struggling through this paper, could you help me out? And we will sit down and think about how we can do this, walk you through the process to be able to support you in that way. Same thing if you were in field, if you were struggling with certain areas in field, that you would, hopefully be able to speak to your field instructor related to that particular struggle. So, trying to eliminate these barriers of, hesitation, hopefully would help each and every one of us to be able to be better and be able to work towards accomplishing our goals in different areas. Here, it might be, this is something that, we want to think about, and we're, in the process of thinking about how we can incorporate this into your practice and for the coming academic year, through a learning contract or a process recording, to really indicate what are your self-care strategies? What are some things that you can do to really take care of yourself in this semester? What will be some barriers? And really helping you think about this in terms of what they could be. So some of the things that we've been talking to Keith. I mentioned some of the pressures of being being a police officer and the work that he does. Many of you are going to be working in the field, in a particular program that may have, various, work to do with clients. And, these things, sometimes when we're hearing these things day in and day out, it could be hard. And so we want to make sure that we're encouraging now, the agencies and supervisors who work with you to be able to recognize and be able to help you talk through these things. But it's a two-way street. And so we want to make sure that we're empowering you guys to be able to, ask those questions. Ask your supervisor what are the things they do to manage a particular difficult situation? How do they cope, doing, what motivates them? What gives them purpose? What's their passion that helps them keep motivated and doing the best work that they can do in this profession? And so part of this is, educating the many organizations that have relationship with us, but also providing you with the information and encouraging you guys to be able to implement this as part of your supervisory work with your field instructor. So there are many, one of the things that we do is how do we continue to, think about how we can take care of ourselves. And, there are many community supports and activities, and we want to encourage you guys to stay connected with us. They're, part of this work is, if we're feeling isolated, and I know that many of us going through this, pandemic, have been in this virtual world, right? It really limited our opportunities to be able to meet with our families, meet with our friends, have, many of the courses you guys took during the year were online. And so, I know for me, I missed, having that in-person contact with the my family and friends, and with the people with students, and which I really much enjoy. And so how do we build those connections? How do you feel about your connections with others? And how do you get involved with that? And so this is something that we want to also encourage you guys to think about, and what you can do to be able to make those kind of connections. Here, we provided some information about, COVID-19 isolation and support, because we understand in this past year how this isolation, more than any year that I've seen it before, we've seen many students struggle in one way or another through this pandemic. Many of you, many students have experienced losses, have experienced the stress behind being in this pandemic. And so, helping people to be able to talk about that, not being stigmatized if you happen to be one of those individuals that were exposed and had COVID, and I had a student say to me, Professor Hiraldo, I was exposed to COVID and nobody wanted to talk to me. Nobody wanted to get near me. Everybody was fearing me. And so being able to help her be able to speak to this experience, and be able to acknowledge this and support her in this way was important to me, to be able to make sure that, students who were maybe experiencing this, that they get the support that they need. So here was this information that was put together. Keith, did you want to say a little bit something about this? Because I know you put some effort into thinking about how COVID had an impact, and the second wave potentially it could cause during this isolation. I know we had an interview with Dr. Sarah related to mental health services that she provides to students. So maybe you can speak to those experiences.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry, I was a little preoccupied. I just saw myself on the page. So Yeah, COVID definitely had put a huge damper. I am a in-person learner, so it took a lot for me to hone my attention to online courses and stuff like that. So I know that definitely put. I think Dr. Sarah, her interview was great. I think she gave us a lot of information on how people can reach out even when places were closed, and to reach out to get the help that they want or need. And I never met her. I thought she was a great person. Just talking to her, she was just very personable and just so down to earth. Not usually what what you think of. Again, like I wasn't a person that went to like a therapist or a counselor. So you think about the person who puts you on the couch and they're holding a pad and pen and they ask you a question and you say something and they start scribbling stuff down real quick. And you think, well, were they trying to get in my mind? It was more so she was just more, hey, look, this is what happens. You can expect this, and this is what you could do, or you can do this. But I thought she did a great job.
Thank you, Keith. So in terms of the media and we have some information here. Part of this is helping you provide a little, giving you a little bit more information about what it means in terms of self-care. So these are different videos that we put together to hopefully help you think about self-care, but also to really inspire you to to really take some steps to really put this in the forefront of your mind when you're going into not only, for field, but moving forward in your life. I think our mission really is to set this foundation for each and every one of you that hopefully you can take with you. Many of you, some of you may practice it, but this, as a professional, as we're moving into this professional practice, how to really be even more intentional about how you're taking care of yourselves. And some of these videos really speak to these experiences. Here we wanted to think about, not just, thinking about the things that really inspire us, right? Because there are things out there that keeps us going. So what is it for you? What are some sayings that really, help you to keep yourself motivated and inspired in this work? And so here in this section really, speaks to this idea of, taking the time to find quotes. What's your favorite quote? These are some examples, but this one said, have faith. Breath is the power behind all things. I breathe in and know that good things will happen. So these are things that sometimes, is the simplest things, right? Sometimes it's just a music or inspirational quote, or you heard this great joke that makes you laugh. Those are the little things that keep you going, right? So here is really to inspire you to think about these things and to give you something to go, to look at, to hopefully, if you're feeling like, what to look for something inspirational, then maybe you can find something here for that. Finally, here you have books and literature and all the articles here that we put together in terms of what that will help you think about, the various work. Now, this is something that people, if you're curious, hopefully you'll be able to find something here. But I'm sure that in the middle of the school year, the last thing you're going to think about is, I have to read another article. You don't have to. Some of these videos are really short and really helps you just to, get a little bit motivated and inspired. But if you, excuse me, if you really want to dig in, here are some of the articles that were put together in terms of the work that we did. And I think so I'm trying to see where. So this is essentially the website, and we're hoping, and we want to encourage you to take a look at it, spread the word, show it to your field instructor. This is what our school is talking about. They're really emphasizing the importance of self-care. How can we incorporate this as part of our work at the agency, as them being your supervisor, and really put some thought into that. We're going to have some workshops that we talk about self-care. So we're sprinkling this across different areas, and we hope that this is something that's really meaningful and helpful to you.
Bernardo, and Keith, I think we have another couple of questions, and I just would love to have a chance
Sure.
for you to respond if we could. First of all, just a shout out for the website. This will be updated. It'll be there as a resource, but I can't thank Keith and his colleagues and Professor Hiraldo enough. We've really come into a new place on all of this. A couple of questions, and they're a little bit related. One student wants to ask, in essence, of self-care, what's a productive way to communicate with a boss or supervisor that your workload is too consuming or overwhelming to manage it effectively? And a little bit related is, I'm fortunate that my supervisor is instrumental in incorporating self-care, but to Keith, how do you recognize when your officers need self-care and implement that in their schedules? Some places aren't that way. So these are a little bit over that issue of it might be risky to raise it, right? It might be risky, or the fear, what if I raise it? Will I be risking my job or my reputation? Any thoughts about these ideas?
Well, I work for both types of supervisors. I work for supervisors that have basically an open door policy and will try to work with you the best they can. And then I've also had supervisors that were, look, this is the job, you do it. And I didn't have this type of, assistance when I was just getting up and going. I guess for the most part, you kind of have to test the waters to see what kind of supervisor you have. At some point, you're going to have to approach either supervisor, and depending on how they work with you is the issue. And I know a lot of supervisors don't want to have people go over their head, so they would try to work with you as best they can. I know with in my unit, we don't really have schedule changes. We work 8:30 to 4:30. I will accommodate people, like if they need to come in a little late, but what I do is I try to balance caseload, not by quantity, much more as quality. So you might have a case where it's really, I don't want to get too much into details, but you have a child that's, in the hospital, and, you're stuck on that case for, I don't want to say stuck, but you're working that case for weeks. And that's one case. And then somebody else is like, well, I got 3 cases, and your 3 cases where, okay, you went out, you interviewed the child didn't disclose any abuse, there was no signs of abuse. You just kind of did like your due diligence and you closed out the case. So what I would try to do is, the other one's going to have a much longer, much more in-depth report, as opposed to one that's going to be a couple. So I try to balance it by quality more so than quantity, so the burnout rate isn't there as much. I know when I first got in this unit, I was going through some times in my life outside of the job where I was burying myself in the work. So I didn't mind burning myself out at the job more so than burning myself out in my personal life. So, but I'm kind of the exact opposite, where I was the person that never asked for help. I still kind of don't, but I want them to be comfortable asking for it, because again, I don't want them to be burnout like I was, or fall into any certain traps where they're making mistakes in such a, even in social work, you don't want to make crucial mistakes that could affect a client or their well-being. So I'd rather fix this now before it becomes a bigger problem later.
So you're really talking, thank you, what an erudite answer. And it goes to the issue of how can we be ethical and effective in serving clients? And I appreciate your sort of aggregating supervisors into a couple of different zones. This may not have been their experience, so they didn't have the benefit of it. It looks burdensome. It looks a little bit like, what are we doing here? But I think there's in your case and in the case of other people, supervisors who do see the value in recognizing the needs, the well-being of the employees, of the supervisees, in order to then serve clients, communities, whatever the constituencies are. We have a phrase in social work: in all things build up the worker, and in all things build up the client. We see those as related skill development sets. These aren't separate. If we've got burned out workers and vicariously traumatized workers, the end users of those workers are the clients, the communities. And our goal, our mission is to really serve those clients and communities well and ethically. So being disposed as you are, Keith, you describe a very open door, sort of an open ethic, an open atmosphere to sensing not just somebody's got 5 cases, everybody gets 5 cases. You're looking at intensity of cases. You're already sensitized to that in a way that appreciates the likely need of worker effectiveness. And I think that's a big change. You know, we'll also be having discussions with our supervisors. Hey, did you know NASW has just, as Professor Hiraldo just pointed out, did you know NASW just brought on new amendments about self-care? Hey, did you know we've got a whole website? Hey, did you know? And there's a lot out here. Many supervisors and field instructors are sort of waiting to find out more about this themselves. Some are deeply immersed in this, but many are needing some support themselves, needing new information. And to see that the profession has stepped up as recently as a month or 2 ago with amendments actually matters. And these are legitimate, this is legitimate information. Our website, which is just a brilliant place to be, I have to say. Thank you to Keith and his colleagues and Bernardo. These are rich resources that we're really bringing this into the daylight. I think this is going to make a big change. So I got to thank you very much. We're almost at time, folks. We're at 12:57, and I think I wonder if there are any concluding remarks that Keith or Bernardo would like to make, and then we're going to say our farewells.
Keith, I'd love to take the lead on that. Any concluding remarks based on your experience, and what would you say to students who are going into field?
I would say the first thing to make sure that you do is if you're feeling the least bit, it's going to be a new experience for most people. So if you're going to feel overwhelmed, you're going to feel it, and not to be afraid or ashamed or embarrassed to show that you need the help. Because in essence, you're talking about an entire career here. You're not, you're here for in field studies. You're only there for a year, and you have somebody there that's going to help you. You have your field supervisor, you have your liaison. They're both there to help you along the way. And you should take whatever they can give you in advice and looking into the vulnerabilities of yourself and establishing boundaries now, because you have a whole career ahead of you. And you don't want to burn out now to find out that this isn't for you, and you're out in 3 to 5 years, I think is what the going. I think that's what I read. Actually, I think it's in 1 to 3 years, not even 3 to 5. But make sure that you do practice self-care. You know what works best for you. Take the time to assess. Take the assessment that's on the webpage, and figure out what you have and what the barriers are there, because you can learn to work around those barriers. I mean, I worked full time. I went to school full time. I had a field work full time, and still, I mean, I felt much better in the spring semester after going through the first semester of learning about self-care, where I learned to carve the time out, even if it's 10 minutes a day or a half hour. I mean, I got it up to as much as an hour and a half on some days, because I just took the extra time because I knew I needed it. So that's the one thing, is work on that, work on your self-care skills, because you're going to need them.
Thank you, Keith. And I think just know that you're not alone in this, that, if you have questions, concerns, that you have people that you can speak to. I will be available. Mark Lamar will be available. There are people around you that we're here to support each other, and that we want to have this conversation. This is not just the end of it today. I'm hoping that we continue to have that conversation moving forward, and that you guys carry that on into your careers. With that being said, I thank you all for hanging in with us and being able to listen to our ideas and thoughts about self-care. And we hope that you took something from this experience.
Thank you all, and I'd like to thank Karen Crimmins from the school administration for managing our time together too. So grateful to your help, Karen, and Keith and Bernardo. All be well. We're going to need to go, but take care. Everyone be well.
Take care.